And that's like a little bit of a truth bomb for some of us because it's like, oh, I was kind of brought up that you work your butt off and you're going to be able to make it. Yeah. But now it's a situation where, hey, a lot of the things can be done automatically using AI. With the advent of AGI, an entire job role can be automated out. You have ChatGPT thinking about this idea of the world coin, right? Mm-hmm. And this idea where, once we have this AGI, it can go out and literally just make a ton of money and it's distributed amongst people. Right, so universal basic income.
Buying that.
And welcome back to the Big Cheese AI Podcast. I am Andre Hericus, the world's 24th best moderator, joined by Sean Hayes and Jacob Wise, two tech leaders here in Indianapolis. And last but not least, Brandon Corbin, one of the brightest AI minds in the Midwest.
Brightest as in color, not in actual intellectual capabilities.
Knowledge.
He shines bright, and I'm Benjamin Button. If you don't understand the reference, go look at our YouTube comments. For this podcast, we're going to be diving into a bunch of different topics, ranging the gamut. But in general, we want to talk about how AI can actually be good and not always bad, potentially. We'll find out throughout the conversation. The first thing we want to talk about is something that's actually really scary, and Elon Musk made it. It's called Neuralink. He wants to drill holes in our heads. So, Brandon, if you don't mind jumping into this really quick, that's where we'll start the episode.
Yeah, so Neuralink is the idea that you basically have, I think it's 1,000 strands that basically they drill a little hole in your head.
Oh, I've seen this. This is called the Matrix.
yeah, it is. Where they plug into the back.
I know Kung Fu.
And all of a sudden, right? But that basically there's 1,000 different fibers that go into your brain and are installed with a machine. So the big part of the business opportunity here for them is the machine itself, where they want to make it an outpatient experience that you can just go in, you sit underneath it, drills a little hole in your dome, sticks a bunch of needles or a bunch of whatever the hell those fingers are, and they go into your brain and they can read and write your neural noise, I guess.
The greatest trick in the world is convincing yourself that it would be okay for Elon Musk to write to your brain.
Yes. So, but conceptually, the idea being is that once we can read and write, we can bypass any problems, right? So if you're blind, right, you basically have a blockage between your optical nerves and getting to your brain. Well, there would be no reason why you couldn't have just now a normal pair of glasses that can write to the Neuralink that is now firing off whatever signals are.
Yeah, because you're not going to fix the optical nerve, but you could create another
exactly, and you
point.
can bypass it. So same thing with people who are paralyzed, right? That you could say, okay, well, yes, they might not have a spinal column communicating, from their brain down to their muscles. But we could actually bypass that, and we can have a machine that they're wearing and that they're just thinking of walking, and the machine can interpret that and make it happen. So they've done it in pigs. We've seen them do it in pigs, and they're reading and writing to the pigs' minds.
What happened to the monkeys?
The monkeys.
Yeah.
The monkeys. Some of the monkeys might have died. Again, you're gonna suffer a little bit as you're going through this process.
Wait, I heard they killed themselves. Is that true or no?
I don't actually know if they committed suicide.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of unproven stuff
Andre,
in this.
Please Google some things about monkeys and Neuralink right now.
All you need to think about though is that conceptually it's a good idea, similar to the Hyperloop, right?
Oh, the Hyperloop awesome.
Was a great idea, but now if you actually see what we have in Vegas, which is like a 4-mile tube underneath Vegas that your Teslas can go 30 miles an hour underneath, and pretty much a long line.
What if we had a train, but it was one car at a time?
Yeah.
No,
so,
wait.
I don't know.
He just wanted to dig holes.
Yeah, we're just what boring.
Boring company.
I got to admit that's a great.
So
brand.
here's the data from. This is cited from the internet, so I have no confirmation whether or not it's true.
Website?
Fortune.com.
Oh God, take this with a grain of salt.
But Google prompted it to the top of the screen, so that means it's true. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, an anti-animal group, obtained public records from UC Davis that showed 12 monkeys died after being implanted with Neuralink's device. Neuralink has since built its own facilities for monkeys in Fremont, California.
So, but
So
they,
we don't know if it
they
was the
died.
devices.
Inconclusive.
They did, yeah, they did.
It's inconclusive. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, that's a nothing burger.
But I mean, hypothetically, like with this technology, if it existed,
Hypothetically,
you could browse the internet in your head, right? Like, how cool would that be? You know, just sitting there, just being like,
I just want
just
so
zoned out.
So like there has to be a freemium version of it, and like so you're blind, and they give you the ability to see, and then
it's
like
ads.
every 5 minutes an ad pops up, and it's like just pay to upgrade to remove this ad. You know that's what would happen. Right?
This new X post from Elon.
No, there
It's
can
not
absolutely.
anti-Semitic, I swear.
Yeah, there can absolutely be some revolutionary things coming out of Neuralink. But yeah, if you guys didn't know that was happening, super cool product that Elon has dumped a few $100 million into, and so it's something to check out. But the other topic of conversation that we want to have is around the good part of AI and how it can positively impact potentially even people that are in poverty and homeless people. So Jacob, you were mentioning that there is something going on in California where there's some legislation being passed that AI can help people that are less privileged.
Yeah, so it's in LA, and it's experimental program that they're basically trying to identify people who are at risk of becoming homeless and intervene before that happens. So, Sean was asking me at lunch today about how they're doing, and of course I'm a headline reader, but the overview is we have data on people. We know what looks like people who are going to become homeless, and we can identify them with that data set and give them the help that they need, hopefully before that happens. So just allocation of resources and a way to help people before that happens. So
yeah, I think it's one of the strategic use cases of LLMs and AI in general is, especially in healthcare, preventative care, is in not treating the issue, but preventing the issue, because everyone's got these big databases full of information that if they were harnessed correctly and were put through a large language model, they could assess and give good predictions of help people out before they end up in a really bad spot.
yeah.
Though, what's kind of weird is and I don't know. I don't think AI has to do anything with this, but with the homelessness, specifically like in California and whatnot, is there just going to be encampments? Right now, there's encampments where they just take over, like underneath overpasses or whatever, and build these things up.
Entire streets.
But with tiny homes, and there's this guy named Sean that I follow on TikTok, and his mission is literally he bought this huge plot of land in Arizona, and he just wants to build a bunch of tiny homes for the homeless people.
Well, this goes directly back to what we talk about, the advancement of technology. You can 3D print homes.
You're right.
You can efficiently manufacture smaller living.
Yeah.
People are thinking outside of the box. And one thing we wanted to touch on this was just people trying to solve problems that actually help the world.
Right.
And AI is going to enable the advancement of those pieces quicker. But we have got to get beyond 2008. Let's go build fart apps, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and start solving some real problems.
Yeah, for the last 10 years or 15 years, all we've done is just build platforms that just get people addicted to them so we can sell ads on top of it.
It's beyond. And there's a lot of people that are really smart that quit Facebook 6, 7, 8 years ago. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that doesn't mean all that work has to be for naught, because Duolingo is one of my favorite apps, and what they're trying to do is leverage the lessons learned from how to get people addicted to things and get them re-engaging in it, but for learning, right? And we can use these lessons for...
What languages are you learning?
I'm learning German.
Okay.
Because he
likes to tell jokes.
Yeah. But the point was, so they recognize that if you ask, first of all, they did some funny stuff where they spent a lot of money trying to figure out when was the best time to ping someone to say, hey, don't forget to do your daily lesson. They have this idea of a streak, and it's all about gamification. But what they learned from all this research was the best time to tell someone to do their lesson was about the same time they did their lesson yesterday. So they spent a lot of money to find out. Just send it to them whenever they did it yesterday.
Humans are creatures of habit.
But they also weren't they the ones who, if you didn't respond after a certain period of time, they actually came back from a user experience standpoint.
Yes, that's a good point. They have a whole mechanism that's like after a few days, they're basically just like, all right, well, guess you're not interested anymore. Have a good one.
Yeah.
And that
And then
psychologically
they'll stop it.
triggers people to be like, well, shit, I I do want to do this. So that brings people back. And
That's actually the only cold email sales tactic that works on me.
Right. It's just
like,
fine. You're a piece of shit.
I'm like,
We're going to ignore you.
You must be good.
you're a loss. We don't need you.
My wife knows that trick too. Fine. Fuck off. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a story that I heard of, and yeah, people have been studying addiction for a really long time, and these things have absolutely bled into every single social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all these people. So here's a story. In Las Vegas, right outside the Strip, right outside the main city, there is an entire state-of-the-art casino that was invested in by OpenAI, that was invested in by all the big tech leaders, and it's specifically designed for people to come into it. There's cameras everywhere. Every single machine is monitored, specifically learning how to get people addicted. The biggest companies in the world invested in this facility and are specifically trying to learn how to get people addicted to things. And the question is, with AI, is there going to be a switch in that, Sean, where people aren't just focused on addiction?
Let's just talk about it real
day?
quick. What was the only thing that really happened that really made a difference in this whole thing? And it's also the biggest risk and the biggest upside is this OpenAI thing, right? They basically came out earlier this year and said, oh, we're a nonprofit. We've got this altruistic vision. We're going to limit our profit distributions, but there's this new tech that we discovered and we got freaked out.
All right.
Right? But we're going to do it the right way. And maybe that helped create a culture of maybe we should be working on some stuff that actually helps the world.
Right.
Right? And stop building these addictive apps and build something that's actually going to change the world for the better. Yeah. And guess what? Changing the world for the better also makes you money. Right? Building new products and services is a highly profitable endeavor if people purchase them, if the government purchase them, if consumers purchase them. And so you're talking about a kind of a culture shift in how tech's built, hopefully. So if you look at, we're trying to look on the bright side.
Right.
We're trying. It's hard. But at the end of the day, a concept that we always talk about is stop building stuff that's just getting kids addicted. Start building stuff that's going to help the blind, help the homeless.
Right.
But
unfortunately, it comes down to profits.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all that. I mean, when again, capitalism is not great, but it's the best thing that we have.
Yeah.
And that it ultimately leads to we need to make more money for our shareholders.
But OpenAI tried to break that, right? You tried to say, let's set up a system where our board and our investors aren't just looking for an exit.
Right. Yeah. We're gonna cap them.
We're gonna cap them. And guess what happened? right.
The cap got moved.
The board fired
the board
CEO.
got moved.
But because why?
All right.
Because greed.
Because greed.
Well, you guys are right. Greed is always going to win out.
Good.
Greed's good. Greed
I
good.
think.
Yeah. Now,
until the 1987 crash and that movie's ratings went down.
So the Apple AirPods, I think, is an example of something that is a good product that also can now be used for good, right? Because they're actually a hearing aid device.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So hearing aids are incredibly expensive. And they are, I don't know if they're quite qualified yet, but if you turn them on, transparency mode, it's basically, it amplifies and it can help people who are hard of hearing. That's where I think, I don't know if this is where we'll go, but we need to start looking for win-win.
It's Apple tripping over itself and actually helping the world for the first time.
They probably did that accidentally. But
just think about what they could have done with all the capital and resources.
You mentioned the X-ray glasses, right? Yeah. And that was for people with hearing impairments. Yeah. But think about, you pitch that to, if I have these glasses on and I go to my networking event and Jacob tie on and I say, hi, Mark, nice to meet you. But I don't remember Mark's fucking name. Yeah. But it tells me his name and can remember that for later on. Yeah. Now I can be more effective salesperson and I can increase my productivity and my numbers go up. Mm-hmm. Now, business will buy that. You know what I mean? Can you position a product that does good but also has a path to revenue as well.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe that's too altruistic, but that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
The glasses,
Sometimes, yeah.
the glasses that are like, hey, you guys you're connected on LinkedIn. Here's like a bunch of different people that you have in common. You could absolutely see that glasses become kind of the next UI experience, right? Like with X-Ray, they just build the software and then they partner with a bunch of different glasses manufacturers. Right now, the glasses are pretty weak, right? Like they have to be, so the one beef that a guy had, this one guy on our Discord, he's like he's like first of all, I'm deaf, I'm ugly, and now you're making me look like I'm blind too, because you have to be sunglasses so you can actually read the subtitles, right? Because the technology just isn't there to have them be bright enough that it can happen like on these, glasses that are transparent, don't have the back blacking.
See what happens when you try to help people.
I know. And he's like, so I just use it on my phone. But nevertheless, you can see that the glasses and Google Glasses kind of was like, they saw that early on. And while it didn't happen, I think we'll eventually get to a point where we're just wearing glasses like these, and I'm having a bunch of overlays, I'm having a bunch of interactions, I'm getting a lot of additional context that's happening with
what you guys are talking about is implementing stuff when there's no economic demand for it. So if there's no economic demand for helping the world get better, then you have to force it. That's where the government comes into play, right? And then, you know what I mean?
Why,
and so
why
what
is
you're
there...
saying, but what happened like kind of after, I lived through it. Jacob and I got out of college in 2008. Right, and there was no jobs, and so people kind of said, "Well, screw capitalism. I'm going to go, brew beer and become a total, I'm stopped cutting my hair and I don't even shower anymore." I never lived that life, but my point is, they stopped caring about making money, but they started doing cool things, right? Being more organic, like living more healthier lifestyle. We're going to go hiking instead of doing some, I don't know, bro task. That's I don't know. My point is that like you have to change the culture a little bit, and I think that kind of is happening. Our younger, that's the thing I see in the education system is the kids are starting to see they're living through this from the ground up. Don't underestimate kids. Don't underestimate the next generation.
They're the future, man.
Right, because they lived through this from the beginning. And guess what they've had in their hands since they got to first grade? A device that has access to Google. My daughter was telling me all kinds of stuff about World War II and why Germany invaded Poland and what happened. And I was like, how do you know all this? She was like, I just looked it up on the internet. I started researching. I'm very interested. And my point is like, if there's economic demand for good, then guess what? There will be products and services that are built to service that good. And so it really comes down to people's wants, wishes, and their demand. Because otherwise, it's just forced from the government. It's going to kind of be, it's not going to work.
Right.
But we have this big problem now, which is we don't know. We don't have a direction. I think Sam Altman, Mr. God of AI, set this direction, and it's starting to completely fall apart.
Right.
In terms of where that company's really headed, no one knows. But it's got to come from other people. It can't just come from them. The implementations of all these technologies have to respond to market demand. Because that's how the system works.
Market demand comes from the consumer. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier before the podcast on these big companies, Google, are potentially sowing their own demise when it comes to getting, you think, platforms like Gemini that are coming out. We're getting very close, potentially. And Brandon, I'm curious in your thoughts as well, when it comes to AGI. And with the advent of AGI, you have this huge revolution of, over-optimizing capitalism for these like one individual groups, and all of a sudden that the only thing that really ever matters now is the consumer and what the individual person wants.
From an AGI standpoint, I think if OpenAI is going to come up with some new model, it's going to be AGI, right? It's able to do virtually anything that you can set a human to do.
For those who don't know it, that's basically the definition of AGI.
Exactly.
It's on par with human capabilities.
Or if not more, right? Like smarter. That if they're going to expose that, then I think I view it just as another extension of what they currently offer, right? Like now I can basically have this worker who works for $2 an hour or whatever the price point's going to be, and I can have him do whatever I tell him to do, and he's going to go and do it and either make me money or not. Right, so now all this, even when AGI does come about, we still need to set it on a trajectory. Like we need to still have it doing something, and I think that's where again, the people who are inquisitive, the people who are like interested in this stuff, they're going to basically go and they're going to be like, I'm going to use this AGI to create a new business that does X, Y, and Z, and it's going to make enough money. I don't think that OpenAI, once they launch an AGI, is going to dominate the entire world, right? They just won't. Like you can't boil the entire ocean. So they'll have a couple things here and there that it can do. Go get me tickets to this sporting event, or go schedule a vacation trip with me and my wife.
I just want someone to create a Google Calendar event.
That can I can just be like, hey, schedule this event with Bob.
I don't have Apple Calendar installed on my iPhone.
Right.
And every time I ask Siri to create a calendar event, she tells
I
me
have to ask
that
Siri.
she can't do that because I don't have the proper application installed.
Siri is stupid as shit. That's the problem.
You know what
they
I did with
cannot
Siri
release...
this morning? Siri's so bad that I said, hey, Siri, add a note. And I was doing that thing with that note I showed you before the thing, the marketing. Because when I wake up in the morning, I have thoughts, I have ideas, and I try to get them out before I forget about them because I'm still in half dream state. And I added this note, and it was great. And then I said, hey, Siri, add on to that note. Oh, no. That's out of scope.
Yeah, no,
they
cannot roll out their large language model fast enough, as far as I'm concerned. Because it's almost a joke at my house now, where like we'll be watching TV and I'll be like, oh well, I wonder how far away is this happened yesterday? How far away is Fort Lauderdale from Miami? Because we're watching some soccer thing that's out right now, and so I'm like, and I pause it and I'm like, hey, how far away is Fort Lauderdale from Miami? And of course, it's always like, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. If you ask me on your iPhone, I'll give you an answer.
I wonder
it's
if
like,
there must be some guy that sits in the basement in Cupertino that no one likes to talk to. Has the whole, all the security keys for the entire company, but he's also the Siri product manager. Oh, it's got to be something like that.
It's so frustrating. It's so bad, and there's no reason why it can't. Right, like they're a $1 trillion company. Stop! And my wife's always like, "Don't stop! Just let me do it on my phone." Yeah. And she always, because then I get angry, and she hates it when I get angry with Siri. She's like, "I hate it when you get so upset with her. She is the dumbest AI that I know," and I'm just like screaming in my house.
I want to answer Andre's question. So what Andre was basically talking about was that if you go through OpenAI's kind of premise when they started, which was, oh my God, we discovered something that's so powerful it's going to eat the world. We need to do this responsibly. Well, okay, you go through that and you say, okay, 3 companies are going to have $3 trillion, $5 trillion, $6 trillion, $8 trillion market caps, and they're going to control the entire world. Well, those companies can't just exist within their own existence and make. Maybe they could. I mean, they'd be more like a government entity that has no accountability for profit. But at the end of the day, they still rely on the basic fundamentals of economics. And in the United States, in most countries, it's consumer demand and consumer spending. When consumer demand and consumer spending are affected, the economy is affected. People don't buy houses. People spend less money on goods and services. The entire economy stops. And so from an alignment perspective, you can't get too far out of bounds or you start completely impacting the economic fundamentals and people start losing money, and that just doesn't work. So there's got to be some sort of middle ground where you're talking about job creation, you're talking about jobs being affected. I'm not as worried about that. I'm interested to see how it goes, but ultimately, I think the best thing we can do to combat risks to AI and making AI work for the good is to have consumers affecting that and demanding and putting demand in things that create economic value for everyone, create change for everyone, and really it's more of a culture thing at that point than it is a technology thing.
Yeah, I do think that, of course, corporations have ultimately the responsibility. You can have that if you want it. It's their responsibility to do these things in a responsible manner, but consumers are smarter than they were when Facebook came out, or just in general, we know a little bit more about how things work and how we can direct them. So hopefully this time around, this innovation, we can help steer it a little bit better as consumers. It's just hard because we do have emotions and the things that are bright and shiny, like we run towards and like, oh, that's so cool, and then we kind of lose sight of like why the hell we're even doing that. But I do think like we are more educated and generally smarter consumers, so hopefully we can help steer it a little bit and do some good, because I don't want to work more hours and do more, and expectations keep rising. I want us to get to a steady state of like, or at least like a sustainable state of growth, but my life gets easier, not maintains.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just a situation where, it's probably harder for people who are, the kind of super hard workers, hyper competitive, humans that are sitting around this table right now, to kind of come to a realization that probably or potentially in the next 10, 15, 5 years, that you just don't need to work as much. And that's like a little bit of a truth bomb for some of us, because it's like, oh, I was kind of brought up that you work your butt off and you're going to be able to make it. Yeah. But now it's a situation where, hey, a lot of the things can be done automatically using AI. With the advent of AGI, an entire job role can be automated out. You have ChatGPT thinking about this idea of the world coin, right? Mm-hmm. And this idea where, once we have this AGI, it can go out and literally just make a ton of money and it's distributed amongst people. Right, so universal basic income.
I ain't buying that.
You know what I mean? But like,
there's
there's a potential where the future is a world that you work 20 hours a week or whatever. Maybe you work more, and you spend a lot more time with your family. You spend a lot more time on passions, and we do kind of aggregate back towards this world and this society where people who are more downtrodden, people who do have disabilities, people who, are just not social anymore because they have been so on software or sitting down at a computer. Now they're out in the world doing things together. So we live this honky-dory future.
The way that Bill Gates and Altman and all these people are going to sell this to you is that super intelligent AI is going to create a golden age for humanity. And that is an outcome that could potentially happen. And that does align with the current way the economy works in terms of consumers drive the economy. Consumers drive the economy. And we need these people to consume goods and services. But do we need them to work? Mm-hmm. That's the question. Do you need them to work or work as much? And the answer right now is I don't think that I need, if I was one of my employees right now, I would be using the tools and technologies that we're literally putting right in front of them and say, use these. Yeah. And save as much time as possible. Yep. I don't care if it took you 2 hours, if it took you 4 hours, if it took you 10 minutes. Yeah. Is it high quality? Does it meet the requirement? Does
exactly.
I'm not going to ask you now. Yeah. Now there's people that are going to go out there and say, well, now I need you to be 30 times as productive, or I'm going to want you to do that doesn't necessarily matter, right? It really doesn't. But I think that it's a way. It could be construed as one of two things. One is they're right. And that's definitely an outcome that they actually want to happen. The other is they're just justifying themselves taking over the world.
Sure.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which one's more likely?
Which one's more likely? I don't know. I think that they're trying to, you're trying to justify.
It could be a little bit of both too, right? Like, I mean, I think that's what we've been dancing around is like, yeah, everything is going to get better, and it's going to enable. The thing I'm most excited about is enabling more people to do more with less, and like leveling the playing field and all that. But ultimately, yeah, there's the corporation side where they're like, yeah, we're gonna get everybody's money and control everything, and everything all roads lead through Google. Gemini. Ooh.
It's just so different than any other. Like I mentioned this last podcast, this invention, this revolution is so much different than all previous ones. Like the steam engine was a thing that other people could build and own and develop, and like multiple people can have a boat that had a steam engine on it. Or the internet, it was like this open source thing where the real monetization of it, or the operating system that they created, was people could build websites and build companies on it. In this case, just like one or two companies own it, and that is the fundamental difference, and that's where you have that.
Hey, so I've tried to do this a few times. There's a lot of studies that happened related to AI, but they're those long studies that take forever. They're from like 2019, 2020. So if anybody has something newer, please let me know. But there's a study that was from 2020. There's another one from 2019. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But basically said that by 2025, 85 million jobs could be replaced by AI.
How many?
In the world. 85 million jobs could be replaced by AI. But literally, footnote, same paragraph, 97 million jobs
are going to
be
created. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No,
this is-
again, it's gonna be the folks who don't adapt will die. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Like there's no complication here, and it sucks to say it. And if you're not someone who's able to adapt and to change, you're in trouble.
I think that's, look at us in our MacBooks and our studios and our microphones, right? There's people that can't adapt because they don't have access, right? There's an accessibility issue there. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Like if you're not participating in the 97 million and you're in the 85, like you got to figure out a way to get on the 97 because 97 minus 85 is 12 million added jobs,
All right.
right? But of those 85 million jobs, how many of those 85 million people are able to move to the 97?
But what stops somebody from adapting? Right. So again, you said that they can't adapt because they don't have access.
Like for example, like there's areas in the world that until recently couldn't access the internet, didn't have a computer.
Okay, that's fair.
Those types of things.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
And that's
right. Where they're
So-
regulated by their government or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
they're in a hostile situation.
also like maybe late stage people in their careers that some of them will, but
No.
most-
So I have no sympathy for those folks.
I don't
have
either.
none.
I
I have
don't
none.
either.
Because again, my father, right, who's now 80 fucking years old or however old he is, he's old, right, is like leaning into ChatGPT. And he's like, this is the new programming language. He's like, look what I can do.
Shout
and I'm like,
out to Grandma Caulfield. She was one of the most influential people in my life. She ran an art studio out of her basement, and she was 83 years old when she died. She was born, that was in 2013, and she would Gmail me in like early 2000s.
Yeah.
She would print. She had her printer working. She had her MacBook.
Right.
She was totally in. You know, and she could do all these types of things with technology. But Jacob's point's still valid. Like there's certain people of those. So if you go 97 minus 85 is 12. There's people in that 85 million, and maybe what we can do is really figure out how to impact the 85 million.
Yeah.
Right? How to impact the 85. Those are the types of people that, if there's the UBI concept, which is called universal basic income, and that's a super touchy topic.
Oh, it is.
But there's probably some of those people
every
that might,
Republican's like, whoa!
yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, we're already there, right? Like
Yeah.
the taxes are paying for for people that are just basically completely disenfranchised from the economy to exist.
Right.
That's already there. So that already exists. It's just how many people can you keep up without being completely, out of bounds, or underwater.
What is the line? We don't know.
The line moves because the governments can continue to print money. And all
I'm
that,
a sovereign citizen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. But at the end of the day, you need economic contributors that pay taxes, that have jobs, or else your government won't function, and that really hurts you because governments are the ones that have monetary policy control.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much across the board in every single country. So
also governments don't have to make money, right? Like their programs don't have to be profitable. Matter of fact, they aren't normally.
Yeah,
Everyone
no.
bitches about governments being inefficient. I'm like, well, yeah, they
I think
kind
the
of by design.
number one opportunity in the world right now is to make governments more efficient. And I think one of the biggest things is there's so much turnover because you have different people coming into power, and those agencies aren't profit centers. But if they could come up with a standard way of doing business and really reducing overhead,
I agree.
that would be really, really
so
good.
here's what I would add to that. A lot of people say, run government more like a business. I disagree. Run government more efficiently, because that's when people say run government more like a business, I think what they actually mean is make better use of my money that I just gave you, because that's the goal of it, right? You give money to the big pot, and the big pot helps the whole group of people, and hopefully rising tides bears in the woods.
No,
You know?
rising tides lifts all ships.
I just wanted to add that back in.
Bring
I thought about
bring
that
it
for
back.
30 minutes.
No, but to your point, yes, let's make things more efficient. Let's utilize our resources in a more efficient way. And that's probably, when we're talking about AI for good, those are the actors that are actually going to be able to leverage it. I do not have a single fucking ounce of hope that Google is going to altruistically help me live my life, other than I do like Google Calendar. That's great. But like, they want money.
Yeah.
They want money,
Yeah.
and they'll do anything to get it. But that doesn't mean they're bad.
It'd be
inherently.
wrong. It'd be
Here's
wrong
the
to
thing, I
accuse
would
them of that
vote-
because they're a
Yeah,
company.
yeah.
Now, if I want any company to control AGI, I'm arguing it's Google, because Google's revenue is all
you're
based
fucking
off consumers. It's all based off consumers. If it's OpenAI has no accountability to consumers. They don't.
I want it to be Apple. I want it to be
Apple has
Apple
accountability to
because
consumers.
Apple has accountability to sell hardware
Yes, to consumers.
to consumers.
Google literally has accountability to a lot of small businesses and a lot of you know what I mean?
You know, Apple's just gonna
like if you're saying, oh, okay, let's say you look up Google's revenue splits. Okay, it's mostly advertising products
yeah.
and services,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
right? And those products and services are owned by not just big companies, right? And they're aligned with the consumer.
Yeah.
So if you think that if you want somebody to become the super company, do you want it to be a hardware company or a enterprise software company that sells to huge other corporations, or do you want it to be someone that's
do you
aligned
want it
with
to
the
be an
consumer?
advertising company? Is what you're fucking telling me, right? I want it to be OpenAI or I want it to be Apple. I don't want it to be an advertising company, because when it's advertising, then it's like, again, what people people don't understand that Amazon actually, like, their advertising division is like the fourth most income producing company, right? Amazon's an advertising company. Like all of these companies.
Okay, the
thing of-
alternative is OpenAI. That's literally just a guy that promised he was going to do a good job.
I
Yeah, no,
swear.
Okay, I promise to handle this
we're good.
responsibly until.
I carry a backpack so I can blow it up if I need to.
But think about also what we're saying is we've just given up hope that it's going to be owned by people. Or like we've all conceded someone is just going to.
Well, there's an absolute argument that every single thing that OpenAI has created is not owned by them.
Yeah.
Right.
They took all human knowledge and just said they own it.
They did.
How the hell did they do that?
We're just
really
going to
wanna
scrape
talk to
the
their lawyers.
internet
Yeah.
and then be like, it's ours.
Yeah.
That's our model. And
Well,
by the way, you're not allowed to train your models on our model because we stole it from those people. You're not allowed to steal it from us.
I mean, seriously. I mean,
Finders keepers, you know.
and then Microsoft. I think the biggest tell on that whole thing was when Microsoft bought GitHub. When
Yeah.
Microsoft bought GitHub, they bought all of our code
Totally.
that we open sourced.
Yes.
And so that
Yeah.
they could use it, consume it to just
Whatever.
absolutely just destroy
100%.
in terms of the amount of data. They aligned. Think about how the product decisions that Microsoft made after they bought GitHub. They completely aligned themselves with JavaScript in the open source community. Why? Number one programming language on GitHub is JavaScript. Second, Python.
Yeah.
Okay. Right? They were like, .NET, rah, rah, rah. They changed their entire business because they were getting insights and data out of
Right.
what they got out of.
Don't they own TypeScript?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
How the
bought
hell
that.
do you own
I
TypeScript?
know, right? like that's theirs. I mean, they're. You got to give them props, though. You've got to give.
You do have to
You've
give
got
them
to give props for like where they came from to now being so. I mean, like even with the Linux subsystem that they've added to the operating system, you know, I mean they've really kind of like led their way to doing some really cool stuff. So I'll give them props.
I am a owner of their stock, and I cannot complain because I bought it at $98.
How much is it?
Oh, that would be in the 300s.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, this is us at the Big Cheese Podcast. Sometimes we're so grateful that you guys join us along our conversation as we talk through the different evolutions of AI. I'm Andre Hericus, joined by Sean Hayes, Jacob Wise, and Brandon Corbin. we will be having guests join us on episode number 10, and they will more than likely be AI guests. And so,
we did find the one.
Yeah.
What was it?
History.ai?
History.ai or something like that, where we can talk to George Washington and be
that would
like,
be George
hey,
Washington.
George Washington, why don't
we'll
you
be
tell us
talking to
about
George
your...
Washington as well. If you guys would like to ask us any specific questions, email podcast@BigCheese.ai. Thank you so much. See you next week.